In Amsterdam, Rembrandt initially stayed with an art dealer named Hendrik van Uylenburg. It was there that the artist met Hendrik's cousin Saskia van Uylenburg, who was the daughter of a wealthy burgomaster. The two married in 1634. Rembrandt was known as a prosperous and fashionable young artist at this time, but he yearned to be considered a gentleman and an intellectual. His new wife was able to introduce him to notable members of society through her well-connected extended family. In 1632, Rembrandt painted a group portrait called The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Tulp, which brought him enormous attention. That same year, he became a burgess of Amsterdam and a member of the local guild of painters. Throughout the 1630s, Rembrandt produced at least 65 commissioned portraits. He also painted biblical and mythological paintings, landscapes and portraits of anonymous people who were interesting to him, such as Jewish people, officers in uniforms, or foreigners in exotic dress. Like many wealthy men of the time period, Rembrandt collected works of art, but also armor, costumes, Oriental turbans, and other curiosities from foreign places. Some of these acquisitions often ended up as props in his work, such as curved sabers, Javanese daggers, and Polish stirrups. When he attended auctions, according to the Italian art historian and biographer Filippo Baldinucci, he acquired clothes that were old-fashioned and disused as long as they struck him as bizarre and picturesque. And he also bid so high at the outset that no one else came forward to bid. And he said he did this in order to emphasize the prestige of his profession. His paintings and etchings show that he had been greatly influenced by the exuberance of Peter Paul Rubens' style, characters, and poses. He wanted the rich life that Rubens enjoyed, full of horses, servants, grooms, cooks, and paint grinders. Rembrandt thoroughly enjoyed being at the height of his powers and reputation. In 1634, the year of his marriage to Saskia van Uylenburg, Rembrandt produced a luminous and highly evocative portrait of his young wife in the guise of Flora, the Roman goddess of spring and fertility. Now housed in the Hermitage Museum, this canvas stands at the intersection of personal affection, mythological allusion, and the broader Dutch tradition of allegorical portraiture. At first glance, the painting seems to partake in a long-standing Renaissance convention of depicting sitters as classical deities. Yet, unlike the idealized goddesses of Italian or Flemish precedent, Saskia retains her recognizable features, grounding the allegory in intimate portraiture. Her expression is gentle and contemplative, her gaze averted from the viewer, which introduces a sense of modesty unusual for mythological representations. This tension between public allegory and private intimacy is central to the painting's power. The choice of Flora is particularly telling. As goddess of flowers, gardens, and fertility, Flora embodied themes of renewal, fecundity, and natural abundance. By casting Saskia in this role, Rembrandt not only celebrated her youth and beauty, but also alluded to their newly forged union, with its promise of marital prosperity and progeny. The symbolism acquires a biographical resonance. Saskia would give birth to several children, though only one survived into adulthood, and the theme of fertility thus carried poignant undertones for the couple. Rembrandt's handling of costume and texture contributes significantly to the painting's allegorical aura. Saskia is enveloped in a voluminous gown of golden hues, enriched with delicate folds that shimmer under a subtle play of light. Her head is adorned with a garland of flowers, some meticulously rendered to suggest specific seasonal blooms. The staff she carries, twined with blossoms, further anchors her identity as Flora. These floral elements are not mere decorative motifs, but carefully calibrated symbols of life, abundance, and the cycles of nature. From a stylistic perspective, Flora demonstrates Rembrandt's assimilation of Venetian colorism and his departure from the tighter, linear style of his Leiden years. The soft transitions of light, the warm tonalities, and the palpable materiality of fabrics and flowers all attest to his increasing command of painterly richness. At the same time, the psychological depth that characterizes Rembrandt's mature portraits already emerges. Saskia is not simply adorned as Flora, but inhabits the role with a quiet dignity and introspection that transcends costume. Placed within the broader context of Dutch portraiture, Flora is unusual. Whereas Dutch burghers typically preferred sober realism in their likenesses, allegorical and mythological portraits were comparatively rare, often signaling humanist learning or aristocratic aspiration. Rembrandt's decision to depict his wife in such guise thus reflects both his ambition as an artist and his desire to elevate Saskia, herself from a patrician Frisian family, into a sphere of timeless and idealized beauty. Ultimately, Flora, Saskia as Flora, is more than an allegorical conceit. It is a tender testament to the intimacy of Rembrandt's early marriage, an image where personal affection and artistic innovation converge. By merging the recognizable individuality of Saskia with the timeless symbolism of Flora, Rembrandt constructs a portrait that is simultaneously private and public, mortal and mythological. A work that exemplifies his ability to transform lived experience into enduring art. Rembrandt's Judith at the Banquet of Holofernes, 1634, housed in the Museo del Prado in Madrid, occupies a curious place in his oeuvre. Signed Rembrandt F. 1634, the painting was long misidentified as Artemisia receiving Mausolus's ashes, or Sophonisba, receiving the poisoned cup due to its lavish depiction of a richly adorned woman accepting a chalice from her attendant. Only in more recent scholarship has the subject been convincingly identified as Judith, the Jewish widow who seduced and decapitated the Assyrian general Holofernes to save her people, a story recounted in the deuterocanonical Book of Judith. At the heart of the painting lies its deliberate ambiguity. For centuries, viewers were unsure whether the heroine was Artemisia, mourning her husband Mausolus by drinking his ashes, Sophonisba, the Carthaginian noblewoman who chose suicide to avoid Roman captivity, or a generalized queenly figure. This confusion stems from Rembrandt's avoidance of overt iconographic cues. Unlike other artists who often emphasize Judith's sword or Holofernes' severed head, Rembrandt situates the narrative at the banquet, heightening the psychological tension before the climactic act of violence. The result is an image that oscillates between regal portraiture, allegory, and biblical drama. Central to the composition is the heroine herself, who radiates dignity and composure. Seated, adorned in sumptuous garments and glittering jewels, she gazes downward with restraint, her expression caught between solemnity and resolve. Her poise contrasts with the youthful attendant who offers her the cup, creating a dynamic of authority and service. The splendor of her costume with its gold embroidery, pearls, and diadem evokes the conventions of royal portraiture, elevating Judith into the realm of timeless queenship. For the figure's features, Rembrandt likely drew upon his wife Saskia, infusing the biblical heroine with an intimacy that collapses the boundary between personal likeness and historical narrative. Thematically, the work exemplifies Rembrandt's capacity to foreground the psychological and moral dimensions of biblical heroines. Rather than dwelling on Judith's violent triumph, he captures her in a moment of interiority, poised at the threshold of decisive action. In this respect, the painting resonates with the broader 17th century fascination with female virtue, courage, and sacrifice, themes also explored in depictions of figures like Esther and Jael. The opulent treatment of costume and texture further underscores Rembrandt's painterly ambitions at this stage of his career. The gleaming fabrics, the sparkle of jewels, and the play of light across surfaces all testify to his assimilation of Flemish influences, particularly from Rubens, while simultaneously demonstrating his unique interest in psychological realism. Unlike Rubens's exuberant mythological heroines, however, Rembrandt's Judith is more restrained, her grandeur tempered by introspection. The painting also functions as an experiment in narrative condensation. By stripping away explicit violence and focusing on the banquet scene, Rembrandt compels the viewer to consider Judith's moral courage rather than her physical act. This narrative subtlety aligns with his broader artistic trajectory, where the unseen, implied, or interior often carries greater weight than overt spectacle. Judith at the Banquet of Holofernes encapsulates Rembrandt's ability to merge portraiture, biblical narrative, and allegorical grandeur into a single image of enduring complexity. Long misunderstood due to its iconographic subtlety, the painting today stands as a testament to his exploration of feminine heroism, psychological depth, and painterly splendor. By possibly modeling Judith on Saskia, Rembrandt fused the personal with the historical, creating an image that is at once intimate and monumental, private and universal. Rembrandt van Rijn's Descent from the Cross, 1634, now housed in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, stands as one of the most powerful and emotionally charged examples of his religious art. Executed in oil on canvas, this work belongs to a long tradition of depictions of Christ's removal from the cross, a subject treated by countless masters before him. Yet Rembrandt's version is distinguished by its psychological intensity, complex figural arrangement, and extraordinary manipulation of light and shadow. Beyond its artistic qualities, the painting also acquires historical significance through both its religious context in 17th century Holland and its precarious preservation during the Second World War. At first glance, the composition appears crowded, filled with figures clustered around the central action. Yet Rembrandt masterfully organizes this density into a coherent drama, balancing expressive variety with compositional unity. Each individual is given a distinct role, their faces and gestures articulating varying degrees of grief, shock, or solemn restraint. The women in particular embody overt emotional display, their weeping and lamentations made visible through flowing gestures and anguished expressions. By contrast, the men are depicted with a quieter gravity, their grief internalized, manifesting in tightly held features and tense bodily stances. This duality of mourning, the externalized sorrow of women and the stoic silence of men, echoes traditional gendered codes of 17th century devotional imagery, while also amplifying the emotional range of the scene. The figure of Mary is especially poignant. Overwhelmed by despair, she collapses in unconsciousness, supported both physically and emotionally by those around her. Her swoon mirrors Christ's descent, linking the suffering of mother and son in a visual parallel that underscores the human cost of divine sacrifice. At the center of the composition, the lifeless body of Christ is rendered with uncompromising realism. His twisted torso, limp arms, and slumped head convey the inert weight of death. Rembrandt's treatment of Christ's body, rounded, fleshy, and almost Rubenesque, suggests an engagement with the Flemish tradition, particularly Rubens, whose voluptuous figures were widely admired and emulated in the Dutch Republic. Visible are the marks of suffering, the wounds from the crown of thorns and the stigmata in hands and feet, reminders of his passion. Equally striking is the painting's use of light. The event takes place at night, with illumination provided by a network of torches and candles, each casting a different degree of glow. This creates a complex interplay of highlights and shadows, producing an almost theatrical sense of stage lighting. The brightest illumination falls upon Christ's body, marking it unequivocally as the focal point of the composition. From there, light extends to three secondary groupings: the men lowering Christ from the cross, the women preparing burial cloths, and Mary collapsing into the arms of her companions. This distribution of light creates a narrative rhythm. What has occurred, the crucifixion, what is about to occur, the burial, and the emotional consequence of these events, human grief. Through light alone, Rembrandt provides both visual clarity and theological meditation, inviting viewers to move beyond spectacle into contemplation. The work also gains significance when placed within its broader historical and religious context. Rembrandt was not formally affiliated with any church, though his parents came from different traditions, his mother a Catholic, his father a member of the Dutch Reformed Church. In the 17th century, the Netherlands was undergoing intense religious transformation as the Protestant Reformation reshaped cultural life, and the Catholic Counter-Reformation sought to reassert its influence. The descent from the cross belongs to both traditions. It was a devotional image for Catholics and simultaneously a theologically resonant scene for Protestants. By focusing on Christ's suffering and the emotional weight of human witness, Rembrandt transcended confessional boundaries, creating an image that could resonate with viewers across a divided religious landscape. The later history of the painting adds yet another layer of resonance. During the Second World War, as Leningrad, modern St. Petersburg, came under siege, the Hermitage faced the imminent threat of destruction. Masterpieces, including Rembrandt's Descent from the Cross, were carefully removed from their frames and hidden in reinforced vaults and cellars. Some works too fragile to transport were left behind, vulnerable to bombing. After the siege was lifted, the Hermitage was restored and reopened in 1945, with Rembrandt's work returned to public view. The painting thus survived not only the turmoil of 17th century religious strife, but also the devastation of modern warfare, reinforcing its status as a witness to human endurance and cultural resilience. Rembrandt's Descent from the Cross exemplifies his mastery of narrative, composition, and light, while also embodying the intersection of art, faith, and history. Through its emotionally nuanced figures, strategic illumination, and poignant realism, the painting transcends its subject matter to become a meditation on grief, sacrifice, and human frailty. Its survival through centuries of religious upheaval and wartime peril makes it not only a testament to Rembrandt's genius, but also a symbol of the endurance of art itself. Minerva, 1635, an oil-on-canvas painting now held in a Canadian private collection, represents one of the artist's rare forays into the world of classical mythology. Unlike the biblical narratives and portrait commissions that dominate his oeuvre, Minerva positions Rembrandt within the intellectual and cultural dialogues of 17th century Europe, in which the humanist revival of antiquity informed art, literature, and philosophy. The painting, while steeped in mythological subject matter, is at once a work of portraiture, allegory, and history painting, embodying the versatility and ambition of the young Rembrandt at a pivotal stage in his career. The subject of the work, Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom, strategy, and the arts, was a figure of immense symbolic weight in early modern Europe. She was associated not only with the classical virtues of knowledge and prudence, but also with the protection of civic and scholarly pursuits. In depicting Minerva, Rembrandt aligns himself with a long lineage of Renaissance and Baroque artists who elevated the goddess as a symbol of human intellect and moral strength. Yet unlike the idealized and often overtly heroic depictions by Italian and Flemish masters, Rembrandt renders her with striking psychological depth. She is presented not as a distant allegory, but as a tangible, almost portrait-like presence, immersed in quiet thought rather than grandiose display. The composition situates Minerva in an interior space rather than a mythological setting, a decision that grounds the goddess in a humanized, contemplative environment. She is adorned with a rich, elaborately detailed gown, a helmet, and the attributes traditionally associated with her role. Yet Rembrandt's emphasis falls less on her martial power and more on her intellectual gravitas. The light, carefully manipulated to highlight her face and upper body, creates an aura of solemn dignity. Her expression is calm and reflective, inviting the viewer to consider wisdom not as an abstract principle, but as a lived and deeply personal virtue. In this way, Rembrandt departs from Rubens's flamboyant mythological allegories and instead develops an image closer to his portraits, where individuality and inner life dominate the visual narrative. The painting also occupies a significant place within Rembrandt's exploration of costume and texture, showcasing his virtuosity in rendering fabrics, metallic sheen, and flesh tones. The meticulous attention to detail, the shimmer of silk, the glint of Minerva's helmet, the luminous softness of her skin, demonstrates Rembrandt's technical mastery at this relatively early stage in his career. Such painterly richness aligns the work with the broader Baroque fascination with sensory immediacy and dramatic presence, while simultaneously emphasizing the thematic tension between worldly opulence and the spiritual or intellectual pursuits symbolized by Minerva. Beyond its artistic qualities, the history of Minerva's ownership underscores its value and prestige across centuries. From its early possession by James Somerville, 12th Lord Somerville of Edinburgh, through the collections of prominent dealers, financiers, and industrialists, including the Duvain brothers, Jules Bache, Marcel Nemes, Axel Lennart, Wenner Gren, Antenor Patinho, and Marcel Beach, the paintings circulated among some of the most influential figures in 20th century collecting. Its exhibition in the Bridgestone Museum of Art in Tokyo from 1988 to 2011 further reflects the globalization of old master collecting, as masterpieces of the European canon found new audiences in Asia. This rich provenance not only affirms the painting's authenticity and desirability, but also situates it as an object of cultural capital, embodying the shifting patterns of art ownership in modern history. Minerva demonstrates the artist's ability to adapt classical iconography to his distinctive artistic vision. By transforming the goddess of wisdom into a figure of introspective humanity, Rembrandt created an image that bridges allegory and portraiture, myth and reality. The painting's luminous textures, psychological depth, and layered symbolism make it a vital part of his early oeuvre. Moreover, its storied provenance stretching from 17th century Scotland to 21st century Canada underscores its enduring resonance as both a work of art and a cultural artifact. Ultimately, Minerva reveals Rembrandt's fascination with the human face of wisdom, presenting a goddess not as an untouchable deity but as a contemplative figure, radiant with both intellectual and painterly brilliance.